Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Oh, hi, Nikki Kinzer.
Hi.
It's a fine week. We had a week off last week.
We did, Memorial Day.
Impromptu Memorial Day holiday week off. I know you were vacationing. I hope everything was fun and relaxing and rejuvenating.
It was a vacation, and I prepped for my son's graduation. So it was a working vacation. Yes. But my son graduated. He's on to, I hope, the university if plans go the way that they're supposed to, but we'll see. But he's done with high school. That we know for sure.
Fantastic. Congratulations, yes. Mom.
Yes.
We are going to be talking about ADHD and friendships today, and we're very excited to have our guest back after much too long to help us muddle our way through this conversation. Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com. Get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. And if this show has ever touched you or helped you make a change in your life for the better with your ADHD, head over to patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Your dollars each month help us to continue to grow this show and do new things. We just released the ADHD Resource Library. If you're searching for past resources that have been mentioned and discussed on this show, you can find them there. But the thing that I'm most terrified about is we're going to start a new members-only podcast just for patrons, and it's going to be all Pete all the time. Okay, and also community voices. I'm really excited about this. We're going to talk about tech and all kinds of systems and workflows and shortcuts and all kinds of fun things that might help you be a little bit more speedy with your ADHD. So patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Consider joining up. If you're thinking about it, thank you in advance. If you've already done it, we love you so much. We are talking about friendship and ADHD. It has been since 2017 that our guest was last on the show. I can't believe it. Melissa Orlov is back. Welcome back, Melissa. We're not talking about your love life anymore. We're talking about your friends. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for it. Absolutely. And I'm delighted to be back, by the way. I agree with you. It's been way too long.
Way too long.
I'm going to start with the first question that got popped up in our Discord channel because it really starts the conversation.
Yeah.
And what it was is somebody had asked, is it normal for ADHD people to struggle making lasting long-term friendships?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, for a lot of people, if you think about deep, long-term relationships versus sort of superficial ones, it is. And some of that has to do with the symptoms of distractibility and this now, not now time zone thing. The joke that Ned Hallowell likes to say is, 2 time zones with ADHD, now and not now. So when you aren't, I know, it's great, right? So when you're not with somebody, that person is in the not now, and you tend not to be thinking about them. And then just the sort of regular follow-up that you might do with a friend where you might go, oh, I haven't seen so-and-so for a long time, and I think I'll give them a call. ADHD symptoms might get in the way of that, either remembering to do that because, again, they're in the not now, or following up on it. Even if you think about it, you might get distracted and go off and do something else. And then the thought goes into the not now. So it can be a challenge to keep those relationships going. I think it's easier if you have a really big common interest. Perhaps. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Pete.
No, not a problem. I think for me, it's like what happens when you grow beyond the developmental stage when object permanence is a question, right? Like it's what it looks like when if I close my eyes, I know you no longer exist. Right?
That's not now.
That's not now. And that's kind of what it looks like. Please don't play peekaboo with me. As an adult, I still struggle. Because not only is it the now, not now, but when it's not when it becomes now again, I went to my 30th high school reunion recently, and for about a week straight, all I could think about was my relationships with a couple of these people that I ran into. Right, it was
Yeah.
so easy to hyper focus on that commonality. So the swings can make friendships really hard to maintain consistently.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about this and thinking one of the benefits is that you can go back to people you haven't seen for a long time, and assuming that they are also willing to do this, you can jump right back in
Right.
and really, really get some intense time
Yeah.
in with them, like you may have at the reunion. So friendships are about two people.
Right.
And so if the other person is all up for that, you're in good shape. If they're not, not so much.
So I'm curious, when you have friendships, how important is it to share with them about your ADHD so that they understand that, I may not get back to your text right away? Or is it important to mention?
So that's an interesting question. I mean, I think that your friends, if they know anything about ADHD, may suspect you have it
Have it
in the
already.
first place.
Right.
But you have to be careful. There's a very fine line between using ADHD as I am going to get back to you, but it might not be within the next 30 minutes. Of course, it might be, because the
Hmm.
text comes in and it's in the now at that moment, and you might
Mhm.
respond right away. But it can also sound like an excuse. Like,
Mm.
I'm not going to be a very good friend to you because I have ADHD is not something you want to be
Right.
communicating. And so I think that it is on the person who has the ADHD to figure out what that relationship needs.
Hmm.
Some relationships, I was thinking about my husband's one of my husband's best friend relationships is with somebody he's been friends with for 50 years, and they've been riding bikes together. That's how they met, and they both are big enthusiasts for riding bikes. They've been riding bikes together for 50 years, and there
Wow.
was a long period of time when they lived in different parts of the country or whatever. They didn't keep up with each other very often, and now we've moved closer back together, and they're with each other all the time. And so these relationships can actually be very long in
Hmm.
duration.
Hmm.
On the other hand, you have the, oh my gosh, what do I missed that text, or I haven't talked to that person for a month. Can I still talk to them? And that's a question. But I think you have to be really, it's not that you should hide the ADHD. I'm not saying that at all.
Hmm.
I'm saying don't take the next step, which is, because I have ADHD, I might not respond to you as a friend should,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
Take that on as something that you should be thinking
Yeah.
about how to manage.
Well, I
Hmm.
think about my longest relationships. They exist not as with ADHD as an excuse, but with ADHD as a thing that sets context for expectations, right?
Hmm.
That when there is an issue, there is generally an understanding because of our just affinity for each other, that they get it. And it's not that it's an excuse and I have a past. It's an excuse and they understand that's about Pete,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that we've had that conversation before, so we understand each other.
Well, there was a friendship. I remember meeting somebody at a sports event where both of our daughters were playing, and I could tell that the relationship was going to turn into a friendship. And she doesn't have ADHD, but one of the things she said to me when we first started to make like lunch dates and breakfast dates and things like that, she said, "I want you to know I'm really busy with both of my kids' schedules and with working. So I am not going to always be able to do things when it may be convenient for you, or I may not always be able to get back to you right away. But I like you. I want us to continue this friendship." But she really she really did set the boundaries of,
Yeah.
I kind of knew that she wasn't going to be somebody I would talk to every day, but
Hmm.
that we would see each other, once a month or whatever for that breakfast and be able to catch up. So it was kind of nice to just be able to know going into it that I didn't have to take anything personally, like it
Right.
wasn't her, or me.
And that's the perfect way, actually, if you're particularly if you're starting a friendship, or even if you're in the middle of one and the person is saying, gee, why don't I see more of you?
Hmm.
Hmm.
And one of the answers to that is now and not now. And so you have to be careful. If it's that you also just are kind of bad at following up, you may want to think about what strategies could you use, or do you want to say to the person, hey, I'm not very good at reaching out, but I really would like to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out. Don't take it personally. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, because once somebody suggests an idea, I'm usually all ready and raring to go. And so that's another option. And you do people get stuck in this idea of like, have I done this well enough? Is it okay if I actually contact this person or not? It's been a while, whatever. And I think if you reach out to somebody and say, hey, it's been a while, but I would, I'd love to get together with you and go to the park or whatever it is, what do you think? If they don't have time for you or whatever, you'll know. Otherwise, you shouldn't toss out a relationship or feel like, oh, I haven't paid enough attention to it. Just ask. And then if the person's like, no, I don't have time, then you haven't lost anything.
That's true. That's a really good point, right? Because if that's the case, then it's not a friendship to pursue.
Well, again, yeah. I mean, if you're setting context, you're setting context with somebody with the aspiration of becoming friends with them, which means there's some give and take, and you'll know very quickly if they're willing to give.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's talk just a little bit about the value of friendships, because one of the things I hear so often, and I hear from two camps, right? One is the ADHD camp, which is, I have ADHD. It's impossible for me to make consistent friendships. I'm constantly letting new people down, like in my life. I'm not able to live up to even the earliest expectations of deadlines and meeting for lunch. I'm always late. Like I can't do it, so I don't try. And the other camp is hashtag adulting, right? Which is, I'm too busy. I don't know where to meet new people. Everybody I come across, like they're not going to be friends. I don't have time to meet friends. When do I go? I just don't have time to bring new people in my life. What are we missing when we get to that place and we decide, I can't do friends right now?
Well, I mean, connection is vital to one's mental health. And so if you are isolating yourself, either by saying you're not going to be successful at making new friends, or you're too busy to make new friends, you are missing out on one of the greatest parts of life. I mean, it is so important to our mental health and our physical well-being that Ned Hallowell, one of my favorite ADHD professionals, calls it the other vitamin C, the connect vitamin C. It's just really important to our health. So, and unfortunately, if you have that opinion of like, I'm just not going to be good at this, therefore I shouldn't do it, friendships isn't going to be the only place you're going to have that opinion. You're also going to say, I'm not going to be good at this job, therefore I'm not going to apply for it. I'm not going to be good at this long-term relationship, therefore I'm not going to work at it. And you're going to end up feeling as if you just can't function. And it's just not true. Most adults with ADHD can learn how to function really well, or at least well enough to really enjoy their lives. So that's really just going down a rabbit hole that you don't need to go down. Even if it feels impossible right now, there are lots of strategies for getting help. The other folks who are way too busy, that's easy to see. All this stuff is coming at you. You want to do it all. Making priorities isn't a great characteristic for some people with ADHD. They have trouble focusing in on one thing to the exclusion of others. And yet, our lives are so much richer when we have input from others. You have joint excitement to do things together. You have a buddy to go out and try the next fearless thing you want to try, whatever it is. And you miss out on all of that. Can you survive? Yeah. Can you be as happy as you possibly can be? Probably not without some good friends. You don't have to have a lot.
Right.
A few is fine.
We're not talking about starting a baseball team.
No, I think, if you have one or two really close friends, or five, you're in really good shape.
For sure. So going on to that ADHD memory, because you were talking about strategies on, or finding the strategy that you need to keep in touch. And I'm thinking of like birthdays and special events. I have a lot of clients who fear that they're going to miss those things, or they do miss those things, or they're late to getting the card in the mail. What are your thoughts on the memory connection with ADHD friendships? What are some things that people can possibly do?
Well, I'm a big believer in electronic reminders,
Mm-hmm.
just because they're easy. You put it in once and it goes on forever.
Yeah.
You just do annually on X date and then it's done. And so you can do, actually, what I do, because I'm terrible at remembering birthdays, I don't have ADHD. I mean, it's not just about
Right.
ADHD. I put the birthday in annually forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put the with the birth date, so I know which birthday it is. It doesn't change from year to year. And then I put 1 week ahead of time, send a card or whatever it is, also forever. And then a week before that, get the card, right? So, and I mean, I don't do 150 birthdays, otherwise my calendar would be full of this stuff. But so I've got a couple of different reminders that come through. And they're colored, even in a different color. So it really stands out. Um, and I think that's probably the best way. Whatever the reminder system is that you use, get one that is, that you don't have to interact with repeatedly. You don't have to go in every year and go, oh, yeah, it's the birthday. It's just going to automatically come up.
And that reminds me, Pete, of a gal that we interviewed earlier in the year. She used, was it Todoist? Yes, it was Todoist, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exactly the system that she had, very similar. Like she would have, get the birthday card, sign the birthday card, address the birthday card, send the birthday card. So it was broken up in so many pieces, and it wasn't all at once, right? So it was like a week here, this is my task for this week, and that. And I'll tell you, she feels great about the connections that she's had in the last year and a half, since she's been doing this, because it does put it on your radar, and you just feel good about it. You feel good that you're
Yeah.
able to reach out and do it on time, of what they expect. Yeah.
Yeah, and your friends appreciate it as
Mm-hmm.
well. I did another thing, similar kind of thing, which I didn't do last year, but I used to send out an annual letter to everybody just to catch up with everybody. And it was interesting. I mean, that's kind of a pain because it's a lot of people, and I used to mail them. I send some of them by email when I do it. But a lot of people said, "Yeah, I really looked forward to hearing from you." Now, those aren't your deepest
Yeah.
relationships, right? And I mean, I think the friendships, the deep friendships, are really the ones that are worth focusing
Mm-hmm.
in on.
Mm-hmm.
Though there's also the issues around dating
Yes.
and meeting new friends. And one of the issues there has to do with the pressure in the dating apps to respond in certain ways in a certain time frame, all of that, which is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The algorithm has
Mm-hmm.
demands.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does.
Yeah.
And so that can be a real challenge. And I've known some folks who just say, I don't want to do the dating apps because they makes me too anxious,
Mm-hmm.
to have to do it within
I
certain stuff.
want to talk about more about that, but I need to give a hot tip, please. Uh, Even if you are not, if you are a person who lives inside of Facebook, one of the gifts of Facebook for the long time was people put their birthdays in it, and that is what we relied on for birthday notifications.
Mm-hmm.
Go into Facebook and take a half hour, make a task, take a half hour to find your closest friends if you don't know their birth dates, and put their birth dates in your own personal system so that you're reminded outside of Facebook, because our relationship with Facebook ebbs and flows, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to miss birth dates for important relationships because you don't like Facebook right now. I am saying that. I'm saying you, but really I'm talking about me.
You're talking about Pete.
And
Yeah.
I'm absolutely projecting here. I own that. I just want to make sure that and that was a huge thing for me. I found I was writing personal notes, emails, texts to people outside of Facebook, and that was a thing that was even more appreciated by those people,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't just piled in with
With everybody else.
mass of
Yeah.
notifications that they get and feel like thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, scroll, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, right?
Yeah. Those are very superficial
Sure.
touches on Facebook. Any of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
is very superficial.
So I have a question about the dating. And what also Pete was mentioning about not having time, because I just got done with an appointment with a gal who just signed up for one of those dating apps. But what she's nervous about is that she's not going to have the time in her schedule to even go on a date. So there's this like balance, right? Of how do you strike this balance of not, and it's not specifically just going dating, but with friendships too. I mean, how do you wrap your head around making time for it?
The reality with dating is if you can't make time for dating, you're also not going to be able to make time for a relationship.
True.
And so maybe it's not the right time for you to be thinking about getting into a relationship.
Yeah.
But you can do it in different ways. I mean, with friendships, also, you can, for example, set aside your weekends and say, okay, I'm going to do one thing every weekend with a friend whom I like, whatever that is, or whatever the number is that you would choose. And then you reach out and you try to figure out which friends want to do what. Are you going to go to a baseball game with somebody and, go for a beer afterwards? Are you going to go for a walk in the park? Do you want to go to the farmer's market together? Do you want to go to visit a museum? Whatever it is, but just something that's fun and different and get you away from your house as best as you can these days. And those activities are particularly appealing, both for your friends, because it's not just, hey, let's just hang out, but also for the person with the ADHD, because it's active. And the more active, typically, the better for many people who have ADHD. So I think you have to sort of be willing to set aside, if not any evenings or whatever, then at least a day on the weekends, and do it if you can in chunks, right? So one of the things I talk about with couples, and when they're starting to get back into dating, which is the same thing, making time for it, to sort of have some dates, is set aside a block of time. You don't have to know what you're going to do ahead of that time. With your partner, that's easy because you can both say, okay, Saturday afternoon, we're going to do something together. And then you can figure out what it is later. With your friends, it's a little harder because your lives aren't as intertwined, but you can still say to yourself, I'm going to do one thing every weekend with some friends. If you do that, you will end up with some good friends.
Yeah. And you're happier. I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying too. It's like if it's so good for your spirit and your soul after you have that connection. A couple weeks ago, we got together with a family that are friends with our family, and we just randomly went to the park and had a picnic. I can't remember the last time I had a picnic, but it was so fun just to be connected and be outside, and it was kind of spur of the moment, which is good for ADHD for sure.
Yeah, we did something like that yesterday. Now this was with my husband, but you could also do this with friends. In fact, we have done this with friends. We just go, you know what? Let's do something this afternoon. How about if we go to, the local craft brewery that has a Sunday afternoon act on stage, or go for a drive down by Lake Erie, or whatever the thing is, and just go.
Spontaneity is good for relationships.
It's good. Yeah.
And I think we forget that too.
It is.
This goes into the stories that we tell ourselves, right? That I will often find myself in that language of, I have 3 hours right now. I could call my friend who lives down the street and I could say, hey, do you want to go to a movie? But he's busy. He would never have time to be able to do that, right? I tell myself that before I pick up the phone, before I send a message.
And let him tell you he's busy.
Well,
and how easy is that? That negative self-talk. That's where that rears its head.
It does. And I got to tell you, that was definitely one of the things I want to touch upon here is the shame attached to friendships, because they feel, well, we know a lot of ADHDers, they blame themselves because they don't see it as a two-way relationship. So they feel like they're the ones that let the person down or haven't been great at keeping in touch. And so there's this shame of, well, I guess I've just lost that friend, or I can't reach out because I'm embarrassed, or it's been too much time, or they've texted me a couple of times now and I haven't responded. And so I do think it's that it's the how you're talking to yourself about this, not really knowing what the response is going to be. And Melissa, I'm just curious, like, what do you think about that with the shame that's attached?
Yeah, I mean, the shame is pervasive, not just about friendships,
Mm-hmm.
but about a lot of other things. The sense of failure, or the sense that adults with ADHD have, that somehow they're letting other people down. But just like with primary relationships, you don't get to define whether you're letting somebody else down. The other person does.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to assume you know how they're feeling is one step too far. I mean, that is all about your shame, but I'd like people who have those feelings to be willing to at least ask, say, hey, would you like to go for that walk? I have half an hour. Would you like to spontaneously go for a walk?
Mm-hmm.
And if the person is working at some corporate job somewhere, and they're busy all day, they probably won't even respond to you because they're not available. I mean, you do have to choose somebody who might be available to go
Right.
for a walk at the time that you're available. But and I guess there's a fear of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it
Totally.
feels, if somebody says, gee, I can't go for a walk right now, you feel like it's a personal thing, where actually it might just be, oh, I'd love to go for a walk, I just am not free right at the moment. And that's a different thing. In which case, you have told them that you're thinking about
Mm-hmm.
them by offering the invite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That has already come
So
up as a comment in the chat room about rejection. I don't reach out to people because I live with RSD, and I don't like that feeling very much. So I don't
yeah.
embrace these new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think one of the options that you have in that case is this idea of scheduling something that then has spontaneity inside of it. I'll give you an example. I have just recently scheduled a Wednesday morning before everybody gets going, 7 a.m. walk with a bunch of people, some of whom I don't know very well. It's very open. You either come or you don't. We just meet at a certain place at 7 a.m. and people will walk, right? I used to be part of a hiking group, same thing, Friday mornings, whatever. And so that regularity means that you're not going to get rejected. Once that gets established, and it takes a little while for everybody to get it onto their calendars, and if the first day only one other person shows up, it doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means people haven't adjusted yet. Um, but once you do that, then you have a regular way to get together. You just leave it on your calendar. You just you make yourself schedule it so you show up a little early, in case, so you don't, like, they don't leave without you, because they will leave at some point. But then you have that opportunity to solidify those relationships without putting yourself out every single week to these people that you think you might care
Mm-hmm.
about. And so that's one option. It's not the
Yeah.
only one, but it helps with with resolving the rejection fear.
Well, I think for me that spins into the other bit of regularity, which is if I have any concern about not being able to be spontaneous, I have to be less spontaneous. And so, emerging out of the pandemic was, I have a couple of dear friends, and we have weekly meetings on the calendar that we've agreed to, we've invited and accepted. And within that hour of our lunch hour, we can do all sorts of different things. We can eat on
Yeah.
Zoom together. We can talk about technology, whatever. But sometimes we don't really say anything at all. But it's the idea of making sure that we both have that connection. And like at one point, we both had to say yes. And that is momentum building in and of itself. And now we're to the point where we're starting to say, hey, maybe this week we actually meet for lunch. Maybe we come out of our shells, right? And see what happens when we're face to face. And that's actually really exciting too. And I think for a lot of people, my hunch is we're all struggling with, how do you rebuild friendships after the last year that we've had? Like, what are some strategies for dealing with the social anxiety that has come up, that is now magnified by, I don't know how to be a grown-up in public anymore?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think my version of that is pick something really fun, get 2 tickets, whatever, and then find somebody to join you. Whether it's, a concert, or you decide you're going to a bar on Friday night, or whatever the hell it is.
Melissa Orlov's Rip the Band-Aid Off solution to social anxiety.
Well, but but seriously, it's not like, I mean, you could do it more slowly than that, but the fact that it's active and it's fun takes away some of the worry because you'll know, like I just got, so this is what I like to do. I live in Arizona in the winter, and they have the Desert Botanical Garden, which is an amazing place. Was giving a outdoor in the cactuses ballet with the Phoenix Ballet. I thought that sounded really cool. I'd never seen it, whatever. So I got 2 tickets, and then I just looked around for somebody to go. And the people who couldn't go because they were busy or whatever were like, yeah, I'm so glad you invited me. That sounds really cool. So they knew I was thinking about them. The person who went with me, it was fabulous. So it there's, even if you're feeling socially awkward, there's something really fun to do. And so that eases you, in some ways, eases you back in. It's not really to me, ripping the Band-Aid off is going like, okay, now we're here together at lunch. Now what do we do?
And we have to stare at each other. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Pete, we have a couple of questions that came from Patreon. I can't say that correctly. Do you want to read them so that Melissa can answer?
Let's see these are some that are good to pick up on, I think. First, I've found that I cannot see someone for 5 years and pick right back up where we left off for someone I knew when I was younger or with whom I've done an activity, but I struggle to build new connections with people that I just meet but don't have a reason to regularly see. Any advice?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. As an adult, it can be really hard because, to your point before, Pete, we're all so busy. And you have to get a certain number of connections before you really start to feel close to somebody. I would say...
Do you know that number, Melissa? What is that?
No, I don't.
Is there a number I should be shooting for?
There's a magic wand that you can
I would like that. Is it 3? I'll do 3.
No, I don't know. So, I mean, again, I think it is part of it is, and I think of it as enlisting a friend, which is maybe strange language. And this shows you sort of how I do things because I like to be active. But these walks, for example, or because I'm meeting some new people on that, right? Maybe you want to try to go a couple times, like you go to the local brewery and you like it, so you go like, oh, that was fun, okay, maybe there's another thing. The hard part is the reaching out part, because obviously you might go to the brewery with somebody and they might go, maybe I'm not so interested in this relationship after all. And you'll know if you invite them to do a couple of really fun things and they say, no, I really don't have time for that, versus, hey, I would love to do that, but I'm out of town or I don't have time for that right now. But how about if we do something another time? Then you know that they like you. If they just are going like, I don't know, I might be too busy. You can ask them a couple times, and if by the third time you've heard I might be too busy, that's a good indicator that no, actually maybe this isn't going to go anywhere, and you just try somebody else.
It's like dating. You're dating.
It is. I feel like what we've just done is effectively like, will you go friend with me? Check box, right? Like yes or no.
But it is like that because the reality is, as adults, you don't have room for a lot of friends. I mean, even as kids, you don't. The number of really close friends is 2 hands or less. And so it is sort of like dating. You're trying to figure out, like, if this person kind of simpatico, can we go have a lot of fun together? Is it worth taking time out of my busy schedule? So and then there are a lot of people who are sort of at the next level down, which is people that for a while, like on Facebook or around town or whatever. But it's okay. You're investigating to see, like, are you simpatico for having fun together and just being friends and supporting each other and not having sex or any of that.
It's interesting too, because I find that, like, my friends that I grew up with in high school, we can pick up, but it's different. It's all about memories. Oh, I remember this, I remember that. And it's like catching up with, okay, what are you doing with your life now? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it becomes a consistent friendship going forward. It's more of just a catch up, kind of thing. And then you've got friends that I've met through most recent years that have stuck It's just, I mean, it's just interesting. It's like it all depends on the relationships and the people and what you have in common and what you're doing at the time. Because I mean, friendships can come and go, right? I
Oh,
mean,
that's the
Yeah.
depending.
reunion paradox, right? I
Yeah.
love you for who you were when we were together 20 years ago. I'm not sure I like you that much now. Like, let's
Right.
celebrate. Let's go ahead and agree. I'm going to celebrate who we were for 5 days, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But some of those also, I've had an experience with some of my own high school friends where staying connected on social media, specifically
Mm.
Instagram, is what I use because I hate Facebook. A few people where I'm watching their lives and their lives are fascinating. And the things that they're talking about or whatever and we go back and forth and we have developed closer relationships just by the almost the intensity of it's like often it's daily or weekly
Yeah.
interactions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that can be one part of cementing that friendship, particularly if you're worried about being rejected in person or whatever.
Yeah.
You can solidify some of it or build some of it electronically, as long as you're careful. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, you don't want to be saying things that are inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
social media where everybody in the world can read them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Remember that time you got drunk with that one person who's now the mayor of our city? Remember
yeah,
that time? That was
yeah,
Remember
fun.
that?
exactly.
I
Remember
have a
that
picture
time
of
with
it
the
somewhere.
cow? Oh God, what a hoot! I think that's really it, and I think that gets back to something that I think I've really cherished over this last year, which is the smaller, bespoke communities that we've been a part of. And I think our ADHD community is one of those. But just, friends and colleagues, people from long ago who come together in a smaller a platform that isn't Facebook. Like maybe it's a Facebook
Right.
group, maybe it's another Discord group, maybe it's just a messages chat group with just like 8 or 10 people in it. Those have been really special because it's the same vibe, right? You get the same sort of community like reconnection electronically, but you don't have quite so much fear of like public disgrace, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that the pandemic actually has enabled is neighborhood groups
Yeah.
along the same line. It's a smaller group, um, but we had one that started up, which was wonderful because we got to know our neighbors. We happen to live in a pretty new neighborhood. It's like 3 years
Mm-hmm.
old, something like
Mhm.
that. So a lot of people interested in getting to know everybody. But we went outside every Saturday night, whoever was available. Brought our own chair,
Mm-hmm.
brought our own drink, brought our own food, stayed 10 feet apart,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but got to know some
Mhm.
people in a very low key way.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You can physically pull a group of geographically located people together
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis. Maybe it's first Fridays. It's not every
Yeah.
week, but first Fridays or something where you say, "Hey, let's get a group of people together out and bring your chairs out to the street or somebody's yard
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
and make everybody feel
Yeah.
welcome."
Well, and I think a lot of communities are starting to come back around. If you don't have a community that does a first Friday or first Monday or whatever they do, check it out and see what it's like. Because a lot of the businesses who've been struggling during the pandemic and food trucks in our area, there are food truck communities that are really trying to engage that social muscle. It's really easy to be outside and be separated, but sort of feel what it's like to have a community again, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
which is really
Face
fun.
to face.
And
Yeah.
those are
Right.
low risk ways to meet
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah.
So,
I
Pete, I
yeah.
want to, this last question I think is really a good one about
Yeah.
communicative miscues, because I know that
Mhm.
that's something that anxiety is built up if you feel like
Huge.
you want to read the question?
Yep. I struggle with communicative miscues constantly. Even when I'm on my game, I forget words, I get in my head, and I notice myself struggling to keep up with those social cues that help move conversations along. I've noticed this has especially gotten worse since the pandemic. Before that, I'd sort of trained myself to go out regularly and get exposed to social situations so I could exercise those social cue muscles. But now they're extra weak. Anyone else have trouble
Mm.
in that area?
Yes. And I also wonder if anxiety might be playing a role there as well, where anxiety is adding to a wariness of trusting whether or not you're reading things correctly. So one of the interesting things about some of the ADHD research has to do with the ability to read the cues coming from others, particularly emotional cues, when you have ADHD. And that isn't always a strong muscle for people who have ADHD. There are some sort of conversational tricks that you can use. For example, so do I hear you saying whatever it is, right? So a sort of a repeat back without being too obvious about it to make sure you've understood. That's one, or something like that. So I think what you're saying is X, Y, Z. And if the person says, no, 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 what I was really saying was something else, then it was good that you did that. And another is that there are people who are particularly patient with people taking time, for example, to collect their thoughts. And there are, and this sounds very strange. I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but there are actually a lot of potential friends out there, and so if you find that you're with somebody who is really impatient about how long it takes you to pull your ideas together or to understand what's being said, maybe you need to be looking for somebody else who's less concerned about that. And again, another good way to do that is in a shared interest group. If you ride bikes, maybe you join a biking group or something like that, so that there's at least a common language to start out with around the activity that you're doing. And then it takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know if I answered that question
Well, no, I
adequately.
think so.
I think so.
Well, at least for me, I mean, it's just a reminder that I think I would like to add as a reminder that we're all struggling with this right now.
Right.
Like we're all coming out of this cave syndrome, and it's hard. And it's just hard. So recognizing that the person you're talking to might just be feeling a little bit of this too. So insofar as you might be in your own head about forgetting words, just remember like there's double occupancy in their head too.
Yeah. And sometimes just, and again, this depends on the person, because I know if you're experiencing a lot of shame or whatever, you might not be able to do this. But just say, wow, I'm struggling to find the right words here. Hang on.
Yeah.
Or something that can help as well. It means that you don't have to fill in all the spaces. And actually, for someone who has those issues, somebody who is comfortable with silence for a while might be a very good friend.
That's right.
And there are some and people vary on that. That spectrum.
Well, and I just want to say too, before we wrap up, is I think it is important to see what is a good friend for you. What are you looking for with somebody being patient or somebody who has similar interests, like all of the things that you've recommended with these different groups and organizations, and thinking about those things and figuring out what you need, because it is a two-way relationship. It doesn't just go one way.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about what do I want in my friends and what will my friends see in me? I mean, I think about one person I know in particular who is a real explorer. Like that's what her ADHD does for her. She's constantly learning new things. She's very distractible when she is not really tamping that down. And she's learned everywhere. And her friends who have stayed her friends love that about her. That is one of her great qualities. So for her, a good friend is somebody who really enjoys seeing things in a new way, learning new things, going on adventures together, being willing to walk down the street and suddenly have her go off and look at some cool new bug that just showed up or whatever the thing is. And she may or may not always be in touch with those friends, but they still love that core part of who she is. So if you are somebody who has a strength like that, whether it's creativity or exploring or, something else, fearlessness, for example, all of which can come easily with ADHD, look for friends in those arenas. If you are fearless and you love whatever it is you love, skiing or, mountain biking on racing or whatever, go find friends there.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Take advantage of your strengths and really build on those. And that's where you're gonna find the strongest connections in any event.
I play Pokemon Go with my son from time to time, and we meet some of the most amazing people. We're in a parking lot on the coast here of Oregon in Cannon Beach, and we run into some people in a giant RV. They are clearly in their 80s, and they're playing Pokemon with us. And they turn to us and say, we both retired the same year and fell in love with this game, and it has led us through in our RV all over North America, meeting the most amazing people. And all we do is drive from rest stop to rest stop and play Pokemon Go. And we sold everything. We just live in our RV. That is a great example, right? You find the community that finds you. I think that's really inspiring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No judgment. No judgment.
Well, and I have to say too, just going back to the number of friends, I'm under that 5 for sure.
Yeah.
And lots of acquaintances, but under 5 for really people that I would, get really deep with, or I know I can depend on, or I want to see on a frequent basis. So it's definitely not the number. It's not a number issue at all.
No, and you cannot sustain a lot of friends, and even the sort of next tier down. I don't remember what the number is, but it's not as big as you would think it is. And you have to be careful not to think like, oh, everybody else has got all those friends. I see them all on Facebook or whatever it is. That's not what it's about. It is about having a few people that you really enjoy being with, who really enjoy being with you, that you can count on, and that's
it.
That's what you're looking for.
It's great.
This is fantastic stuff. And I hope a good reminder for those listening about just maybe it should be inspiring as you come out of the cave and look to rebuild and rejuvenate some friendships. Thank you so much, Melissa, for hanging out with us and helping us through this. Can you update us on your work, your writing? Where would you like people to go learn more about you?
Well, so my website is at ADHDmarriage.com. And I have a huge website as well as information about treatment. I give a seminar for couples. I give support groups. I am working on a really exciting project that I can't. If I told you about it, I have to kill you. No, that's not true. But it's a professional training project, which I'm really excited about. So that will be posted as well at some point in the future.
It's called ADHD Hunger Games. Bring a bow. Well, thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us and listening to this show. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute, head over to the Show Talk channel in our Discord server, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer and Melissa Orlov, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.